And so it's really, as the name suggests, it's about applying psychology, the theory, the concept, the practices, the processes from various fields of psychology into coaching, right? Because that's really the genesis of what we do and how the profession has come into being. And the idea is therefore to see how do we use any kind of research, science-based, evidence-based methodologies in our work. And it goes without saying that there are various influences over the last many decades. And we are going to dip into some of those. And when I say we, it's each of the class members who are really going to kind of provide us with insights about what's really the substance of the theory that you're focusing on. What fundamental premises are those theories based on? What does it seek to study? What does the theory seek to study? And what can we pick up? And given that coaching is about creating change, right? And we have been talking about for the last many sessions about how coaching is really, in a sense, an adult-based approach, adult learning-based approach, right? A belief in a fundamental belief in the client's ability to tap into their own resources. So what is it that we can really pick up from any of these theories? What is the contribution of these theories to the coaching profession, right? And therefore, how does this theory help us to understand how coaching is different from educating, training, teaching, consulting, advising, mentoring? So what is it really that makes this the collaborative, co-creative process, the part of partnership that we all aim to you know, in a sense, represent and personify? Is that okay?
Yes.
And so, yes, we are going to talk about, for like this particular module, the first half talks about humanistic approach. You can talk about how this kind of, you know, builds on positive psychology, how also understanding the cognitive behavioral coaching approach. Now, I just want us to, you know, kind of understand that coaching psychology, typically, the components of coaching psychology, you know, focuses on three areas. Yeah, one is, of course, values. So, for example, when you talk about the humanistic approach, you're really going to dip into, you know, what are the fundamental values by which we view another human being, and therefore, what does it, you know, what is the platform? What is the what are the principles on which coaching is based on? So the humanistic approach becomes one form. The other element that coaching psychology is about is the relational skills. You know, a lot of stuff that you've been doing in terms of the ICF competencies, when we talk of empathy, when we talk of altruism, when we talk of compassion, all of that is really about the coach-coachee relationship. When we talk of mindfulness, authenticity, courage, calm, playfulness, you know, warmth, all of that is really kind of helping us sustain the relationship. And once again, there, coaching psychology draws on theories and models, and you must have, if you've not yet done it, you will, you know, in one of the classes, you will get into appreciative inquiry, the whole field of nonviolent communication, motivational, interviewing and discussions, all of that is related to the relational skills. And then, of course, is the coaching processes, and also, in a sense, the mechanics which the coaching is built on, and that's where we will talk about evidence-based, goal-based approaches. And of course, specific disciplines, for example, the intercultural model that one of the groups is going to present on. But broadly speaking, the components of coaching psychology are values, relationships, and coaching processes. Okay, so I want us to, see that as we skill ourselves, to become, refined in our approaches as coaches, we're really figuring out how to create a space that is non-judgmental, which is challenging, which is based on rapport and respect and regard, and with certain structures and understanding of how the human mechanics work, which is really kind of going to kind of help us along the way in terms of grounding us in some very solid, robust understanding of and knowledge, okay, of how we function and what therefore creates the possibility of change. So that's just the beginning, and we're just setting the context. So now I'm going to invite the first group.
Can I just ask you, what do you mean by humanistic?
Yeah, so that is what the next group, the group that is here to talk about humanistic psychology, is going to present. Who was that question from?
Asit.
Asit, wonderful, Asit, and great. So let's put on our hats of curiosity. And one of the things I want to say out here is all of us have been preparing for our presentations. There may be little things when we function as group, on the side, there'll be a chatter. Have we thought about this? Have we thought, have we said this? Let's do this. That last minute stuff that may be of interest. I just want us to let go of this, because this is there's no assessment, there's no exam, it's nothing of that sort, right? We're just bringing in some understanding and opening it up for discussion. So what I would request you to practice listening here, just come in to understand what the other group has to offer, what they have brought in, and let's just explore. Are we okay on that?
Yes.
Great, wonderful. So let's go in with the humanistic person-centered approach. Who's going to come in?
That's me, Mary.
Wonderful, Mary. So can I request that the others put their, I know a lot of people in this class go off the video, but if I can request for the, that those who are presenting go on video and the rest of us go off video. Is that okay?
Lata, I have a small problem today. The minute I put my video on, my mute button goes on for some strange reason. I just tried it 5 minutes back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this off video for some time and then see how I can pop in back in as the video goes on.
Okay, no worries.
I'm so sorry about this.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So long as people who can do it are doing it, let's just kind of see how we can.
But still, Mary can speak closing her eyes. We will not watch that.
No, I'm not. I'll try not. No, Raghu, I'll definitely want to be seen. But today, Murphy's Law, something is going wrong. I have no clue what it is.
Okay, so Mary, who else is there in your team?
Yeah, so if I have to start, firstly, good evening to the class. And I'm representing Group 1, the buddy coaching session. And my team members are Deepak and Anupama.
Okay.
Deepak is is on the call, but he's in transit at the moment, so maybe he will not be able to be audible. So I'm representing my buddies, and I'm going to be sharing the learning that we have kind of derived on this topic, which is humanistic approach to psychology. And so to be honest, we sat in like typically as a group, did our Google research, did our buddy sessions, and did our coaching guide briefs and all of that. And we have come to a few conclusions or a few learnings that we would like to share, which is as follows. Um, if if I were to describe to the class humanistic approach and what our learnings are as a group is, it's an interesting perspective. It's a perspective where we are talking about emphasizing on empathy and stressing more on the good of the human behavior. So basically we are talking about a very positive approach to the entire human mankind, is what you kind of got away as a learning. Besides this, how you can define, not exactly as a definition, but if one were to talk about humanistic approach, it's a study of the whole person. So all of us as individuals is study of each one of us, or study of the human mind, the human being as a whole. Fundamentally, therefore it becomes very person centered, right? Very individualistic, in a sense where one the premise of the whole approach is an individual behavior is connected to our inner feelings, right? To most of our, to the deepest inner feelings that we have, and the self image that we have of ourselves. And ultimately, as individuals, or as Mary, as coaches, or as mere individuals, how we are influenced in the humanistic approach by our own self perceptions, and maybe also by the personal meaning that we attach to every expression of our life, and how we use it to unleash solutions for our life, to go ahead with what we think about ourselves, and how we can come to solutions. So in a nutshell, if I were to simply make it as simple as it can be, it is a study of the person on the whole. How do you cultivate the humanistic approach to ourselves, or how do you cultivate the human approach to life in general, to psychology, or to our daily life? We came across this very interesting read, and it said that if each one of us were to practice moving away from the mind, which is our logical ego, right, or logical thinking process, and if we go to ourself, then maybe that transition of mind to self will allow us as individuals in that self space that we find, which is so positive in nature. Self is always very good, very positive, very accepting, very forgiving, very non-judgmental. And if we can do that transitioning of the mind to self, and if I were to draw that parallel of the humanistic approach to coaching, that's what we have been learning over all these sessions and over all our coaching guides, is how as coaches we value the client's perspective. We focus on the client's worth, his or her individual space is what we pay attention to. And maybe that when we're doing that in its truest form, a Mary or a Deepak or a Anupama or anybody in this class is actually disconnecting from the mind and just keeping themselves as a zero and entering into the coach's persona. And that itself is so much of dancing in the coach's world, dancing in the coach's conversation. It's also practicing non-judgmental behavior. It is practicing empathy because we are constantly listening. It's practicing authenticity because we are ensuring that the coachee is able to solve his or her own hardships that they have, obstacles that they have. And with this persona as a coach, uh, of being humanistic, of being empathetic, we are helping our coachees, or we are helping probably, maybe, the inner circle of our life, could be friends, could be whoever in our lives. We are helping people to achieve whatever they want to achieve in terms of goals, maybe their self actualization journey. And while we are doing this, applying this approach of disconnecting from the mind, getting to the self, we are helping people to become resilient. We are helping to people becoming more acceptable of their world, understanding how they can connect to the personal meanings, their expressions, and how they can make it fruitful. uh, this is what we understood, and the parallel we draw from humanistic approach to coaching. But even if we were to take humanistic approach to our daily lives, right? Whether it is relationships, whether it is so we as people in our relationships, or maybe at work, or maybe as a parent. If I were to give you examples, the most humanistic approach I see in terms of practice in my life are my parents, because they are so unconditional to me. They have always been so unconditional to my ways of life, and just continue to love me, and given me certain beliefs of inclusion as a value, which I used in my life when I transcended from one workplace to another workplace, which was international. I didn't have the problem of connecting to people from different cultures, because my parent used that humanistic approach and gave me that platform to be, accepting. So this is one example I could think of, when we were reading this as a group. And that's when, as a group, we also figured out that humanistic approach of being selfless, how it kind of reflected during the pandemic era that we all went through. We saw so many um, we saw so many medical workers, we saw so many first responders, we saw the entire medical world being there 24 by 7 at our disposal, going that extra mile, and reaching out to human beings at large. And at that point in time, they would have just disconnected with whatever issues they had, just to keep themselves available in a space where they were serving, they were empathetic. And I think that's what the theory which is proposed by Carl Rogers is what we're studying in the coaching guide. It kind of exemplifies that how one can be selfless in a pursuit if one wants to really achieve that empathy. During the pandemic, there were so many other people and so many other situations that came to the limelight. Somebody like Sonu Sood, that also came to our focuses. He just provided a platform, and he ensured that people who couldn't reach their homes, he was not getting any benefit out of it, but he just ensured that they could reach their homes, they could reach their loved ones. What triggered that in him, right? So maybe if we attach humanistic approach to the inner circle of our life or to the external circle, but primarily focusing on coaching, because that's our current topic of discussion. So if I were to draw a parallel to that, as coaches, uh, the theory of humanistic approach is where we can constantly anchor an optimistic, or let's say a positive view in our sessions with our coaches, help them maximize their potential. For that, we need to more than often not be in a very logical space. At times, you need to be blank, because that's where we probably come into ourselves and be non-judgmental. We have this absolute empathetic nature, where we are authentic in our presence, where we don't cut short of any assumptions, where we are probably, as the theory suggests, we are unconditionally positive in our responses to our coachee. And maybe when we operate at that level, maybe that can give our coachee an absolute journey of maximizing his or her own potential. So if the base of humanistic approaches, since it stresses on empathy, it stresses on the good of human mankind. If we all in this class of 22, if we applied, if we thought about humanistic approach in our careers, in our lives, maybe the 22 of us or the 25 of us could multiply it to 50, and we could pay it forward and make it 100, and maybe the world would get a better place, get to be a better place. But our learnings as a group is how you can use this approach in daily life, in our coaching careers. And the base and premise of it is, ultimately, as people, we are free individuals and we are influenced by our own self perception. So as coaches, how can we reflect that?
Okay,
This is what I
Mary.
want to leave with the class. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Um, so, and I think that was, you know, I really like the subtext of what you were presenting, Mary, in terms of talking about, you know, respect and regard and positivity, right?
Yeah.
And working with a belief in the person's potential. And yes, you know, as the name suggests, that is, you know, that the person-centered approach or the humanistic approach is around that. Is there anyone else? And thank you so much, Mary, and thank you for bringing up those examples.
Thank you.
And I could see as you were talking that there was really a lot of belief and personal conviction that was coming in to what you were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. So now I just want to open up this floor. Is there anything specific that anyone else who knows about this wants to talk about? And then I'll add in a few more inputs or any questions that you may have for Mary. Okay. Did what she say make sense? Did you kind of resonate with what she was presenting?
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
made
I
a lot
would.
of sense.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
To an extent, yes, we were able to connect with what she was saying.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I heard. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I can see your.
My name is Karthik.
Oh, just
No. I mean the other gentleman who is.
yeah. Sorry, it's Ian here. I don't know why it's got
Okay,
iPhone on.
yeah,
I
you
apologise
put
for
an
that.
iPhone.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was particularly interested in the references to pandemic and post-pandemic, really,
Right.
and the way that in terms of context impacts upon our, well, potentially even through the digital communications that we're becoming more used to, the limitations that presents for rapport and for manner of even cultural elements of integration and communication, particularly. So I was struck by that reference to the pandemic context and how we navigate through that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
In a sense, pandemic represents an extraordinary circumstance of life. And it therefore probably, you know, in a sense, offers you opportunity to amplify some of those, you know, some of our capabilities to go beyond, above and beyond, right? What may be our regular business as usual way of working, and to really kind of go out and offer support, even if it were to just show that, hey, we care, we are concerned, we see what you are going through. And Ian, the references you brought to, you know, also, you know, the aspects of, you know, people across cultures, you know, being able to see elements of diversity, you know, and being able to bring in that kind of regard and respect. Yes, and the humanistic approach certainly kind of, the regard, Mary Joseph, what she spoke about and what
Yeah.
Carl Rogers talks about is unconditional positive regard.
Right.
Yeah. And in that phrase of unconditional positive regard is the assumption that each one has a certain value, right? Irrespective of whether we know them or we don't know them, what we know about their capability or not, and can we just approach them and look at them the way we see them, the way we feel about them? Is there a regard, a positive regard that is not conditioned by our biases?
True.
Right?
That's very true.
Now, I just want to add a little more to what you have brought in. And, just for us to understand that this humanistic side, this theory came in on the, before this came in sometime in the 50s, typically, a psychology, there was a lot of work that was happening in the area of psychology, which is really based on pathology, right? Things that were going wrong, the whole Freudian, form of psychology, where one really looked for what could be going wrong and what may be the areas that may be impacted by childhood experiences and childhood traumas. And, you would do dream analysis and all of that. And if you see also what the other pillar that, psychology really focused on was the aspect of, what Skinner and Pavlov, brought in, which was really about conditioning, that we are all conditioned, right? That our thoughts and behaviors are really conditioned by the environment, by the interaction that we do with the environment, the stimulus response, right? And there is a certain conditioning that happens around the environment. And what the humanistic form of psychology brought in was really the fact that it's possible to study psychology beyond these two components, or beyond these two approaches, right? It's possible to study psychology or to focus on the so-called good side, not just on the past, not just on pathology, right? And that's where someone like Carl Rogers, or Abraham Maslow brought in this whole pyramid of self-actualization, right? Brought in the element that human beings are not it's not predetermined, and that people have control over their destiny, over their experiences, over what they're going to create in life. And that there is a need, there's a fundamental need in the human being to grow, to self-actualize, right? If you remember when we spoke about, even in neuroscience, we spoke about one of the needs of the brain is to grow, to learn. And this is what Carl Rogers coined as the actualizing tendency, right? And that within that, the idea is that there is every person has their innate ability to love, to connect, to grow, to self-actualize, and that they want to overcome obstacles. And it's possible to set up conditions which will really help them to be self-directed, self-initiated. Okay. And that is therefore, if you look at the approach, some of the pillars on which this approach is built on, one is, of course, what Mary spoke about, the person as a whole, the holistic approach, right? View the person as a whole in terms of who she or he is. In coaching, we talk about, when we work as coaches, and if you have paid attention, close attention to the ICF competencies, and if you've already done the component of coaching mindset, and as even in the mentoring program, we'll be covering this, that focusing on as much of the being of the client and not just on the doing. Who is this person? What are the values? What are the beliefs? What does drive this person individually as different from someone else? Right? And then there is the what we spoke about, the growth, and need to self-actualize, and that each individual has the potential to therefore move from where he or she is towards something that they regard as more positive, something that they aspire for. And in that sense, you remember in coaching, we talk about what is the current state of the person, what is the desired state of the person, right? Are we all familiar with this phrase?
Right.
And so therefore, the whole premise is that people want to move from one state to another. And the humanistic approach says that there is one which is the current self. There is one where there is an ideal self out there, and we're all kind of trying to achieve some ideal self of ours. How do we resonate with some of these ideas? I just want anyone to, kind of unmute and talk about this. That there is a current self, there is an ideal self, and there is, what may be what they will finally achieve as, what you may call the real self. But there is a current and an ideal. Do all of us come with some sense of what is the ideal me?
What is your
Yes,
question? So how do we go about is your question, is it?
I'm asking, do we all resonate with that idea? And whatever else you may want to add to that.
Absolutely. When we have a self, and especially when this is what we want to achieve, we say, at that point in time, we have a goal as an icon or someone whom we want to resonate with. So once we have that icon and we start thinking, this is the way I want to project myself in future, then it gives us a process or a path or a way to say, okay, this is the process I need to follow to become like this person, right? So definitely that personification, it helps a lot in terms of the iconization, right? So it helps a lot in
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Karthik. Yes, Seema.
Yeah, and I think the future me, what I want to become, always keeps changing. It keeps evolving.
Yeah.
I don't think so it's ever static. So once I achieve a near future me, there's again a changed future me. So there's again a gap that I need to bridge in. At least basis my experience, limited experience, I would say always the future me is never achieved. Given the environment, given whosoever I'm idolizing as, whatever it is, the future me is always adding on to the gap. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is the real me, right? And, so the starting point, Karthik, for example, what you said, what I'm doing and where I want to achieve, one of the questions is to ask is, who am I? Right? How do I see myself? What is my sense of identity?
Right.
And when we ask our clients this question, if that response is, positive, then we know that there is a sense of they're feeling safe, they're feeling overall positive. They seem to have a sense of who they are and what their role is in this world. And if it's not so positive, it also gives us clues into what may be really going on in their world, in their inner world. And therefore the question, and then the question to ask would be, who would you like to be? Yeah. So the identity, the identity could be, one is of course that, what I may think I am. And there may be some part of who I actually am, which is also part of the awareness we create. And also helping them move towards that ideal self. So when you ask a question about, okay, you want to achieve success, and what does success mean to you? And what would be different about you when you achieve that success? You're really integrating not just what they want to do, but also who they want to be. And that is that holistic view of the person. And, Carl Rogers talks about a word called congruence. How do you relate to this word called congruence with relation to your clients?
It would be to be authentic.
To be authentic. What
to be
else?
Consistent.
Okay, to be consistent.
I would relate it to the verbal and non-verbal language being in congruence with each other.
Okay, so the verbal and the non-verbal, if we say is, something that represents what's going on in the unconscious, and the conscious
Yes.
being in congruence. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, what else?
Could it be compatibility? I don't know. I'm just thinking.
Compatibility with what or who?
With the, if the person is in the logical mind and, being probably judgmental of himself, while actually he or she is not. Being critical is what I'm saying. So maybe actually the person is not a critical person, but the situations are not, compatible for him to think, or he or her to think like that. I'm just thinking off the cuff, but could that be congruence also? So as a coach, where you direct the person from where the person is coming, what is the thought process that the person is coming from?
So if we were to kind of rephrase what you're saying, Mary, you're saying that a person wants to be X, but thinks that the environment is calling on a certain adjustment,
true,
which does not, in a sense, feel okay for the person.
Yes.
That could be, there could be an incongruence.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. If you were to even take this situation, there is something that I want to be, which is my ideal self.
Right.
This is what I am today. And when that distance between what I am and where I want to be is huge and looks unachievable, then I feel unadjusted, and that can become incongruence.
True.
Right?
Yep.
Beautiful. So Carl Rogers says that one of the things we're helping our clients do is to move from that incongruent self, which can impact our sense of self-worth, our sense of okayness, and helping them move towards a state of congruence. How does that resonate for you as coaches? Naama? I can repeat what I said. How does that resonate for you? Carl Rogers says that, when there is a distance between what I am, my real self, and the ideal self, there's a state called, maladjustment. There is incongruence, discrepancy between my actual self as I perceive it and my ideal self. And part of what the coach is doing is helping the client achieve congruence. How do we relate to this idea? Anyone? And if
so,
you do,
and I'm just guessing here, okay? Is it something like, so the goal that the client has set in his mind, whatever he wants to achieve, maybe he wants to achieve because that's the ideal self, but he's not ready for it, or we had learned somewhere that the goal, there could be a change in the goal, something linked to that. So, okay, I want to be this, but I'm not ready for it.
Okay.
I don't know how to put it across. So this is what, so let's say my goal is to become the CEO of an organization a year down the line or 2 years down the line. And I want someone to coach me for that. Okay. Now I have set that goal because I see everybody around. I feel that it's the most ideal goal for me. given the stage where I am in my life, professionally, personally. However, when the coach coaches me, he realizes that where I am and where I want to reach, it's kind of not possible, something like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
Seema. Yeah, go on. That it may be something that it's too far, the stretch is too much. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, as in, so it's something like I want to reach the moon, I want to reach the stars, but I am not really capable of reaching there now. It's something like that. So so there is an incongruence. It's
There
not
can be
my
an incongruence.
efforts that I am trying to put in now towards the goal that I have set. My efforts are not in congruence towards the accomplishment of my goals, maybe.
Okay, sure. So what I heard you say also, Seema, is the person does not feel capable of reaching there. So a sense of capability, you know, when I don't know if all of you have done the Robert Dill's model, the neurological levels. And if you haven't, you will do it at some point. Maybe Shyam will take it up during the NLP session. So the stretch may be in terms of capability, or the stretch may be in terms of a belief system in my mind about what I am, you know, or it could be related to what I am capable of or what I'm not capable of, or something else as a belief that, you know, that may be coming in my way, which may be creating resistance.
Okay. Here's an example.
Okay.
I mean, let me know if I'm thinking in the right direction. So here's the thing. I want to be very active on social media. Okay, that's the goal that I've set. However, given the way I have been brought up, I feel so my mind is more so I have a belief that if I go and put things on social media, it's like blowing my own trumpet. I have that belief, but my goal is to be active on social media. Is it something like that?
Yeah, sure. So it may be a belief system that if I put myself out there, I may be blowing my own trumpet, I may be seen as vain, but I want to be visible. So there is an ideal self of wanting to be visible, but there may be a belief that may be coming in the way. Seema, whether it's a belief or a capability or a behavior, when you spoke about efforts, there is a distance between what one wants and where one is. Right? Yes, Ian, please go on. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting observation there. I was going to talk around idealism and almost the individual profile of the individual as an idealist or as a guardian or as a rationalist. But picking up that point about social media, I think is a brilliant example, because I have a lot of issues around that with regard to visibility and vanity with my teams. So there's a sort of, you know, two camps really, that one camp sees the value, the other sees the potential loss to reputation and threat, etc. But just as we've articulated, there seems to be, to me, a clarity in the value of visible communication, which seems to me a positive thing, whereas the values and the cultural dimensions around vanity or the manner of communication can be a block. I'm really interested in that congruence, because I think that's where there's a lot of either dismissive or limited behaviors around social media, which are related to the dangers as opposed to the opportunities. I thought it was a really good example for me.
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, absolutely. And I thank you, Seema. So that's a great example, which is Ian. So also, you know, when you talk about values, right, it may be a value or it may be a belief. The value may be about wanting to, you know, kind of wanting to create a presence for, you know, for visibility, for expansion, whatever may be the value. And yet in countering that is a certain belief that may come from a cultural, collective, you know, consciousness that exists prevails there, which is that, what does this point to in terms of a mindset, right? But at the same time, as an individual, because you may value something else, the incongruence may turn up. And that means that we're not adjusting to where I am today, because the ideal self that I assume is an inachievable for whatever reasons that are there. And when a client sits in front of us, the coach is really helping discover and explore, where is this incongruence really lying? Is it, as Seema said, a capability issue? Is it an effort or behavior issue? Is it something in the environment? Is it something in my belief system? Or is it also a value incongruence, because I may be thinking it's important because the world thinks it's important, but I don't know whether that's really what I think is what I really value for myself. Is that?
Can I just add something?
Yes,
can I just
Nama?
add something? Yeah,
Yes.
We have almost covered just about all aspects. And while you all were talking, the very first thing that struck me was, of course, the core beliefs and the values that you have been brought up with.
Yeah.
So if that is not in congruence with your real self, there is going to be incongruence.
Yes.
But since we have covered almost all aspects, there's one thing that just struck me, and that's split personality.
Mm-hmm.
That when you are in a situation and you're supposed to behave in a certain manner, but you're not adapt to that environment, and you are not that self, so you behave in a different manner. When you are trying to behave in a different manner and trying to depict yourself in a different manner, incongruence comes into place.
Absolutely. Yes.
And there are a lot of chances that when you have a client sitting in front of you and he's not being honest, because he knows that a certain answer to a question actually warrants a certain answer, which is not true to himself. So in order to be in line with the opposite person's expectation, he is putting up another front. So incongruence happens.
Incongruence can happen. Yes, absolutely. And all of them, you can still put them under the cluster of beliefs and values and capabilities and purpose and identity, Nama. I coach a lot of women who often, when we talk values, find it very difficult to say that they prioritize money and financial freedom. When it comes to, they'll come to the last two and they'll say, hey, I want to, I value being a mother and I value this. And then when you ask them, okay, what's really important? And you can see that there may be that kind of incongruence that may appear because they may want something, but they may not feel okay to state it. And that really brings us to the space that, coaching is a space where you create that non-judgmental safe space. And if we are able to help them discover what is that ideal self, what is that thing that can keep them sleepless in the night or keep them starry-eyed about something, right? And get them to understand their own unique self. And that is really what humanistic psychology is about. And I really want us to, and I'm glad, I hope we are picking up that, so humanistic psychology is one of the earliest theories that, that has come in, which really moved us away from pathology, conditioning-based behavioral theories, to helping us understand that all of us individually are different, we function differently, we have the possibility of creating our own choices. And if we as coaches can respect that need and help their individual need to self-actualize and treat them in positive regard, irrespective of where they are today, then we are creating a safe space for them. Are we okay on this? Are we good to go? Can we move on to the next one?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Ms. Aya, I would like to bring your attention to the chat box. There's a very interesting question asked by Shiv.
Yeah. What should be the non-emotional yet human approach towards psychology? Because as of now, we're focusing on just the emotional identity of the humankind. So, Shiv, when we talk about human perceptions and needs and the need to self-actualize, we're not necessarily only focusing on the emotional dimension. Shiv, we're talking on the need, the desire, and when we talk about, I think when we come to the cognitive behavioral coaching, we'll come to that, yeah, about what creates emotions. And
gotcha.
Yeah, also emotions is one of your easiest access to what your unconscious needs. And if you don't access that signal, you're probably going to miss out on a big part of what the unconscious, what is the deep need, what are the deep reference points that exist that the unconscious is really pointing you towards. Okay.
But what if a client is having kind of a resistance towards the emotional identity? So how are we go, like, we need to have, like, each problem have different solutions, right? So
Yeah.
as coaches, how are we supposed to approach the psychological aspect, or you can say the mental approach? So because there is a mental identity, emotional identity, and then you have real self, as we have already discussed in the group.
Right,
So
right.
For now,
So,
I have just, sorry about that. Carry on, please.
Yeah, sure. So, if we were to pick one tip from Carl Rogers, what we just did, what is that one tip you would take if someone is resisting talking about what's really going on deep inside? What is that one tip, Shiv, that you have picked up?
I don't know as of now.
Anyone else wants to take a shot? Where are the others? Anupama, Venkat, Deepak, Mridu, Himanshu, Tyagi, Shahinaz. Come on, what is that one tip if a client is sitting and not really kind of accessing the emotional component of what it means? I mean, if you ask them, okay, why do you need it? And they still are working at the head space. Someone who has not answered quickly, what is that one tip that we picked up from the humanistic approach that we have, studied just now? Venkat, you want to take a shot?
Yep, maybe apart from coaching, we can recommend for other areas, right? If he is not emotional or kind of stuff, whatever the best, probably we can refer to him, and let him go ahead with that. Then we can come back to the coaching. That is what I am thinking as of now.
Okay. Anyone else? So one of the first things, Shiv, is we're picking up unconditional positive regard. Okay. To be able to accept and acknowledge the client in terms of where they are right now. Yeah. Now, and when clients come as coaches, and that's the difference between coaching and counseling. Coaching is really about someone committing as functioning individuals to the process of change. Right? Then when they commit to it, then it's really about seeing what is there in our process, in our toolkit that we can do in order to help them open up. And if you work with their thought process, you will be able to, kind of begin to anchor them in that those thoughts and their emotions at some point in the process. Does that connect?
Kind of, but
Kind of.
I agree with you that we will discuss about this more in future as well.
Sure.
Because let's say that the emotional approach is not going to help the client, or let's say it's literally irrelevant right now, because most of it is empathy based and emotional based, and just like you said. So, but yeah, I totally understand that aspect of it, that the client should be, receptive towards that side as well.
Yeah. There may be work that you can do with them at a cognitive level, to some level, but that the difference of coaching the person vis-a-vis coaching the issue will be if you are able to help them tap into beliefs and emotions and deep identity related sensing. Otherwise,
Gotcha.
you can work at the head level, the closer transaction, but it's not going to be transformative.
Lada,
Okay?
this is Abdur here.
Yes, sorry, who's that?
Abdur.
Yes, Abdur. Yeah.
See, one thing, right? I'm just thinking. See, if coach and coachee is nothing but more of a partnership, and if one is not willing, he really doesn't want the solution, right? It is always, as a coach, I can decide, right? He is not going to have any help for him, so I can even recommend him others rather than wasting my time, right?
Absolutely, you can. The question, absolutely, Abdur. So at the time of contracting, even after you get into the coaching, if something new emerges, right, that you feel that this needs, there's some deep trauma, unresolved trauma, which may need, a different kind of support, you can pass them on to the counselor, or that the coachee, while he shows, talks of an intention, but is not able to commit to it, it may be good for him and for you to tell him that, look, it looks like you're not really ready, and maybe you want to come in some other time, or if you think someone else you can recommend, you could recommend them. Yeah. But before that, it's useful for us as coaches to examine, what are the leverages that we have, what are the levers that we have that we need to work with. And there are people who will come in with a very cognitive kind of preference of style, right? And so to understand that frame of reference, and anchor it to what is it that, what is it, the value behind that, right? What is the value system behind that? What are the beliefs? What are the emotions? They may not be as sensitive as another client, but that's different from not anchoring it in a certain emotion that is important to them. They are two different things. Okay.